Hi all, welcome to today's Top Ways to Protect DFARS Contracts webinar. My name is Jack Ardrey and I will be moderating today's program, which is brought to you by Charles IT. Charles IT is a leading compliance expert and managed IT service provider in Connecticut. We are recording today's session, so all attendee lines are muted. After the webinar concludes, attendees will receive an email that provides a copy of the presentation and a link to the recording of the webinar. We will begin with a presentation. Following this presentation, we will have a question and answer session. You can submit any questions you have throughout this presentation via the Q&A button on your screen. We have a large audience with us today, so our presenter will likely not get to all of your questions. He will work to follow up on those questions that he does not have the opportunity to address. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Foster Charles. Foster is the founder and CEO of Charles IT, as well as one of our high-level compliance experts. Foster founded Charles IT back in 2006 and has grown his skills and his team drastically since then. He has had experience in the highly regulated industries for many years now and has had an experienced background in helping businesses of all sizes to prepare for their respective compliances. I will now turn the floor over to Foster.
Hi, everyone. So today we are going over DFARS and how to make sure that you keep your contracts, especially when things might go sideways or a couple of gotchas that you might not be aware of. So some of the topics: what the heck is DFARS? What are the regulations? A lot of people call it DFARS is like the regulation. 800-171 are the guidelines that you follow from it. So we'll go over what those security guidelines are, the safeguarding of all that information, and how you respond to incidences. This is one of the main reasons we see people like falter. What happens if you get some malicious software and then, okay, something happened? How do we do an assessment of what that damage is? And then how the heck can we help? So we're going to start right off the bat with what is DFARS? So DFARS was originally published in 2015 by the DoD. Then in 2017, it became required that you actually had to do it. So DFARS was required, needed to happen, and it's now it's technically required as a self-assessment. So why the heck is it around? It was really about enhancing security of what they call civil and defense organizations. So it is CUI. CUI is it's confidential, unclassified information. That's what it stands for. And really what that is all these parts and pieces. Let's take a top secret fighter pilot engine, right? And so we have a new plane that the government is producing. It's top secret and it's classified. Well, controlled, unclassified information is basically an individual part, maybe in the part of the engine. That one part by itself is a controlled piece of information, but it's not really classified. But when you put a bunch of these parts together, it becomes something that is classified. So basically what the government was trying to do is that their major contractors and things weren't getting breached. What was really going on is that they were hacking all these different subs, and these subs didn't have the right defenses in place, and they were putting together hundreds of little pieces together to get something that was classified, and they were able to piece all those things together. So really this regulation came out to kind of force more security regulations and stop all these leaks that were happening and to stop our classified information from bleeding out. So what are the regulations to DFARS? What is being forced upon everybody? Basically, it's really, you should go risk assessments, like who the heck is this vendor? Is this, who the heck am I hiring? Is this a US-based company, or is this some person in China that might have some other state interest? Making sure that you're doing your own security assessments. And then you're rolling out all your own safeguards, both in IT systems, but physical. Like, is there a lock on the door? Is there somewhere where people have to sign in? Can you verify that everybody's US citizen? Things like that. That information should be controlled. And then what parts of those security safeguards are on the IT system? Does everybody patched? Do you have antivirus? That kind of fun. And then they wanted to be able to do access control for it. So the door access control and verifying people are who they say they are. So multi-factor authentication. Hey, I'm Foster. I just logged into this computer, but Foster really just logged into this computer. And then conducting cybersecurity awareness training. One of the biggest things, you can have Fort Knox, but if you give somebody the key to the door, they can just walk right in the front door. So no matter what good security posture that you might have, making sure that everybody is properly trained, and that they call it cybersecurity awareness training. And then what the heck do we do in an incident? Most of the time when things go completely south, they don't close that incident fast enough, and it's developing and employing an incident response policy, doing a tabletop exercise, making sure the organization actually knows what the heck to do when there's a cause of disaster. That's why every time you go on a cruise ship or you go on something like that, like everybody has to practice the fire escape plan, and it's one of the key things that you have to do. They're expecting each organization to have a plan and be able to act it out in like a tabletop exercise. So NIST 800-171, DFARS was like the regulation. These are the guidelines. This is what you actually have to do. So it's auditing and accountability. So hey, we're auditing that certain people have certain rights, and that you don't have two people trying to do like the same thing, or somebody. It's like a financial control. Like he who writes the checks can't sign the checks. It's just those best practices. Awareness and training, which we just went over, making sure that everybody knows, like, is this a phishing email? Do I not accept the wire money out into Nigeria because there's some prince out there that need some money and they promise us riches in return? And then access controls, that's door access control, that's passwords, that's making sure that people are only allowed to access what they're supposed to. Incident response, that is making sure when things go south, what the heck to do. The identification, I am who I say I am, that you logging in. You can't have like one guest account or one username and password that every employee uses. We have to know who's doing what on the system. Configuration management, making sure that when certain things happen, that they're being done in a very consistent style. So when a new employee comes on, that they get the computer in the same way, same time, and it's all set up to a standard. When a server gets built, it's built with certain standards, and specifically with security in mind. Media protection, great. I have all this classified controlled unclassified information laying around. I can't just put it on a USB drive and leave it in my car. That kind of thing. How do I protect it? Where is this data? How do we destroy it? Hey, we're done with it. Like, okay, I can't just throw it in the dumpster because somebody might go in there and pick that kind of stuff up. They're like, ooh, free flash drive. Maintenance, making sure the right things happen on an ongoing basis, like users are deconned and what that is. Personnel security, everybody needs to be a U.S. citizen. Everybody needs to have a background check. You have to verify that. Those are the basic personnel things that you have to do. Physical protections. Is there fire control? Is there basic locks on the door? Do people have to check in like the actual physical protections in there? A security assessment is basically going through and making sure that it's just test. Okay, we're poking once a year, every 6 months, saying, okay, are these here? And just kind of going through the motions and the process, like what do we need to be concerned on and testing that. So usually want like a pen test, something along those lines. A risk assessment, that is vendors. So, hey, I've just brought on this new vendor. Are they more than a two-person company? Or do they have their controls in place? Are they just actually based in China, or if they're based in the US? That kind of fun. And then also risk assessment also comes into internal risk assessment. So, hey, I'm aware that the building could burn down, and what that is. It's assessing your own internal risks and how you're controlling that, whether that's administrative control or maybe that is an accepted risk. Yeah, hey, I accept that an employee could walk into the server room, get the key, get in there, pull all the hard drives out and walk out the door. Like there's not a lot we can do, but we are aware that it's a risk and we're accepting that risk. And then system and communications protection. So are things encrypted? Are things being stored properly? And are we not sending potentially CUI out into the public arena? So this gets to the fun part. How the heck do we protect your coverage? So you're going to see some do's and don'ts, things that we've seen when things go sideways. What do you do? And probably the biggest pain points that our clients have. So the biggest thing here is contractors must be implementing the 800-171. You have to do it. It says like that you can technically self-assess. You have to go through it. You have to do it. And now you actually have to enter your risk score that is produced by this into the government contracting system. So got to do it. The biggest issue that we have in seeing it is like, okay, yes, I swear we're good because it's all in the cloud and it's all great. The cloud computing that you're using must follow that fund clause, 252, 239, 7010. That clause basically sets what clouds you can use. So here's the problem, all right? I'm with AWS, I'm with Microsoft Office 365. A lot of our clients are like, hey, I'm NIST 800-171 compliant because I'm in Office 365. I don't got to worry about my mail. Not really right. You have to be in like Office 365 in what's called GCC High. So there's something called FedRAMP Moderate, and those are the security requirements required by that cloud provider. And what all that basically means is that data, like Office 365, you don't know where it is. And Microsoft usually doesn't know where all your data is as well. It can be in Europe, it can be in South America, it can be in China, it can be wherever the heck you want. They need it to be able to service it. So when you go to GCC High in what's called FedRAMP Moderate, it's basically requiring the data has to stay in the United States. The data must be able to be accessed. So if there's a security incident, the government needs to be able to go in and say, okay, the data is on this server, and then they can pull those hard drives for forensic reasons. Remember, you're protecting against bad state actors. So if they want to know if Russia or China or Bulgaria or whoever might be hacking it, they want to be able to look at that data, get that hard drives, and say, what the heck happened here? So that's what you have to be going to, a FedRAMP Moderate, basically approved cloud. So a lot of times our clients are in the cloud. They're using a cloud backup. They're using a cloud phone system. You're using like all the time. They think they're compliant because they're using Office 365. They're using Salesforce. They're using an 8x8 or a Ring Central phone system. Like all those things are not compliant. So be careful here. This is one of the biggest things we walk into and say, ruh-roh, what we got to fix. So there's sometimes that maybe you get the contract, and like the cool thing here, and a lot of people don't know about, is that you can actually request to get approvals or to get it to be able to use those services. And so you can actually require that. And so you put that into the contracting officer. The DoD basically reviews that and basically approves you or not to actually go with something that might not fill those requirements. And the other thing is, a lot of times you're winning the contract from somebody else, or maybe you had a previous contract and that exception's already made, but you have to remember, you got to send that back through again, get a copy of the previous proposal, do that all over again, and you can get through with not using other things. You just have to ask basically for that exception, put it in writing, get it approved, and you got to remember to keep doing it. Otherwise, again, could get in trouble. So these are the basic things. You have to follow the requirements. All your vendors have to be following those requirements. And the most times we see the missteps is, hey, I'm using an 8x8 phone system, or any hosted phone system. Most of them aren't compatible. Hey, we're using XYZ backup, or hey, we're in Office 365. Those things aren't compatible. You need to be in GCC High. You have to be following things that are technically following FIPS 140. So you have to do these things. Second part, okay, something just happened. Where we see things go sideways, the cyber incident reporting. So you have to review for evidences of compromise. You have to remember that whole like security thing that you have to do every year. You have to go through that and look at your computers, the servers, user accounts, and make sure that, hey, there's no evidence there was a compromise. It's not like, oh, when there's a compromise, please report us. Like when you figure it out, let us know. No, they want you to go and proactively look at your security hygiene once a year at least, and say, okay, like prove it that you haven't been compromised, and how, oh shoot, we have been compromised, or this looks kind of funky, and you have to report that very quickly, 72 hours, got to report it. So you get in way more trouble when you don't report it than if you find something. You know, people are like, oh, that kind of looks weird, but do the paperwork, submit it. It's not a big deal when you do. Like that is a key thing to happen. And the best way to kind of avoid these compromises is what they call medium assurance certificate requirements. So you can get a DoD basically certificate that you load on your computer, and it allows you to be able to visit these highly secured websites, and it verifies you are who you say you are, and it's a great way of doing that. The reason we're bringing it up right now is that you have to acquire one of those certificates to report these instances. So that way other people can't report fake incidences against each other and all that kind of fun. So the big thing is when there is an incident, report it. And it's not that you're like, oh, hey, when we figured out we were compromised. It's be proactive, look if you've been compromised. And if you think you've been compromised, do the paperwork and do it in 72 hours. Okay, we figured out we've been compromised. What do we do? One of the biggest things is, okay, there's compromise. If you get any form of ransomware, consider it compromise. If you get any form of a virus on the thing, could be a compromise. Remember, bad state actors, Bulgaria, China, whatever, somebody bad could be in the network. And a lot of times they're doing something that's highly targeted to the information they want. So this is a lot of times not seen before in the public. So what they want is that if you get something malicious is on your network, one, got to report it. And two, you have to, like, if it's a virus, worm, Trojan, whatever it may be, you have to isolate it, and then you have to submit it to the DoD the Cyber Crime Center, the DC3. And so you don't support that to your contracting officer, it goes to the DC3. And so you follow all those instructions, there's a form you fill out, and you submit that information. And remember, going all the way back to why do you use a certain approved cloud provider or phone system? It's because the government, when you submit that, guess what? They're going to that vendor and saying, give me the hard drives. They were going to do a big deep dive on it, figure out where this stuff came from, who is it, who's responsible, how do we do that? And they're trying to figure out, is this part of a bigger ploy? And then last, okay, so hey, you gotta make sure we're using the right compliant, and if you're not, you might have an incident, you gotta report it. Okay, well, usually it's some form of virus or malicious software. How do you submit that and what happens there? And then great, all that stuff has happened. The next thing you do is, okay, how bad's the damage? So when they do that, they go pull the hard drives, they go, ay caramba, this is from XYZ country. How do we figure out how bad it is? They're going to go and they're going to come and do their own damage assessment a lot of times. And so they figure out, okay, what activity or is a breach or whatever it may be. They'll request the media, remember, media from the computer. That could be your own machine. Where clients mess up is that, hey, we got ransomware, let's blow away that computer, restart, and do that. No. Bad. Don't do that. Anytime you have anything that's funky, weird, something malicious, that you basically isolate that system, disconnect it from the internet, and just freeze it in time, shut it off. And then you have to go and figure out something else. Don't wipe that away. Don't delete it. Don't do anything like that, because a lot of times they want the monitoring, the packet information. They want a copy of the computer. They're taking the hard drives. They're doing all the forensics. So they will come and decide, okay, I submitted the form. They're like, oh, this is scary. They're working on XYZ top secret project. This is a highly classified. We saw one or two other things that kind of related to the same project. Let's go take a peek at it. Please give me that computer. Go get those hard drives. Hey, we're contacting Microsoft, getting their information. And you have to keep all that information for at least 90 days from when you submitted the cyber incident, because that's how long they got. They have 90 days to do that. So that computer's just sitting there in the corner. You can't play with it. Don't turn it on. I know you're like, you gotta bite the bullet, go buy a new computer, do whatever you gotta do. But if you have an incident, don't touch it for 90 days. And then they can request, or they can say, hey, yeah, give me that information. They're like, no, you're good. That was like, we know what that malware was. That's not something that's from a bad actor that we're concerned about. So if you need to become DFARS compliant, the biggest question that we get, or 800-171, people know it from, well, both sides of it. The best thing you can do, gap assessment. You got to figure out where the holes are. You got to figure out, like, oh, we don't have multi-factor authentication, or you technically need to have multi-factor to log into your computer. Most people don't have that. A lot of times we take over and they don't have it. And then you have to figure out, once you get the gap assessments, you know where the holes are. You have to show that. You're technically going to create what's called a POAM, and you're going to start saying, okay, here are all the gaps. This is what they are, how we intend to fix, when we intend to fix them, and then you start implementing all the different remediations. And that's where we can help. We can help, and we know all the different pieces of software. We know all those requirements. We know how to do it, and we know the right pieces of software to buy and implement, so the different software don't clobber each other. So like a lot of times you go out and buy this to protect for encryption. This is a SIM. This is MDR. This is external vulnerability scanning, and they all like fight and battle, and then nobody can work because computers are slow and all. It gets terrible. So that's really where we come in. We craft those types of technology that fill all the requirements, don't clobber each other. And we kind of hold your hand through that. And so you get the gap assessment. We help fill out all those gaps. We do a lot of that paperwork, and then great, you actually go through a real audit. We can do that audit, and we'll give you what your security score is, and then we provide the proof of security. So when you're doing it appropriately, you're going to have every single control. Here's a physical evidence of that. So like a screenshot of something proving it, or here's the actual documents, here's the policies, here's everything you have. And when you fill out all that information, you know you're doing it, it produces a score. And then you can submit it to the government, and you can be confident in it. What is super important about that confidence is that right now, DFARS 800-171, like, you have to be self-assessing. You can self-assess. You're going to be pushed into CMMC level 3. That's coming out over the next 5 years. All the contracts in 5 years from now will require it, and you're going to have a third party actually go and confirm that you're doing it. So if you don't want to be like, hey, if I don't get this contract, or I'm not CMMC level 3, or don't have this, you're going to lose that contract. And if you don't want a big old surprise dollar spend that nobody likes to have, start doing it now. It's going to be required in at least 5 years, and depending on where you are in the supply chain, it can be a lot faster than that. So I think right now we have a bunch of people online, a couple questions and stuff. I'll hand it over to Jack to kind of moderate some questions.
Great, thanks Foster, and thanks for a great presentation. Taking those key steps to make sure they're done correctly is important in keeping and maintaining the DoD contracts. There's been plenty of great key takeaways from this program. So with that being said, we'll now move into the Q&A. As a reminder, submit any questions you have via the Q&A button on your screen. Foster will likely not get to all of them, but he will work to follow up on those questions he does not have the opportunity to address.
I promise I will respond to them.
So first question, Foster, what are the details of clause 252.239-7010 for cloud computing? So the key requirements, what you have to make sure whoever you're dealing with, you can say, hey, are you DFARS or 800-171 compliant, or you're looking for FedRAMP medium compliance. That's the exact specific clause. And basically what they're looking for is, do we know the data isn't leaving the US? So are the data centers in the US? Check, great. Are all the people touching that data US citizens? Second biggest check. Third is are they FedRAMP medium compliant? And the medium compliance in FedRAMP is a very expensive process for somebody. It's probably like 100 or 200 grand to go and get for like a major provider. So it's no small thing. And what that is, they have the right processes and things in place to be able to present that information back to the government, and they know they can go in and collect that. So
being able to have access to those data and the government can come and pull in are really what that clause is all about, and be able to deliver it. And it's basically that the cloud provider will comply exactly to what the DoD's requirements for security are, and that they know how to interact with them and go through that, and then that they will report a security incident that it's not internal. It like copies of those things go to the government. So that's basically what that clause is all about.
Great, thank you for the clarification there. Next question we have here, do I need a third party to tell me I'm compliant with DFARS?
Not right now. The DFARS, you can self-assess again, go through, and it's kind of like those PCI questionnaires that you get for your business. If you're any of you guys doing credit card processing or handling credit card numbers, like people most of the time check all the boxes and say, yes, of course we're doing all this stuff. And the government basically caught a lot of people doing that and kind of promising it, and that's why the risk scores came out and requirement that came out, I think last November. And so those things you are presenting and you can self-assess right now. CMMC level 3 is not. Those things it's rolling, it's coming out full force. Even with the administration change, they are still strongly pushing forward on CMMC, which is a consolidation of a bunch of different regulations and everything, and putting everybody on the same playing field of saying, okay, are you 1, 2, 3, 4, level 5? Level 5 being super secure, DoD, top secret stuff. 3 is very classically DFARS and 800, 171 plus add a handful of controls to it. And level 1, like I'm making paper clips for the government, and you have to have some basic security practices there. So those will be required. A third party will have to come in and verify it, and then it gets submitted to the CMMC board. They approve it. The auditors go through extensive training. Like it's a very formal process. So right now, self-assess. Soon, no. It's a long answer to it. Relatively simple question.
No worries there. Some good clarification. Moving on to our third question here. How much does it cost to make sure that I'm DFARS compliant?
That's a fun one. So the DFARS compliant for CMMC level 3, it's going to require, it all depends on the size that you have. So a good general ballpark is $10,000, $15,000 on the low end, and you can go really, really high depending on the size and complexity of your environment. Most subs are probably in a $20,000 to $25,000 range. You can, if it's simple or it's not a major part of your business, maybe $15,000 to go through and say, hey, where am I? Get that gap assessment and start filling it out. And then depending on what you have in place, like okay, we don't have encryption, or hey, we don't have, we're not in GCC high or for Office 365. Those things obviously cost more money, but basically to figure out how deep the water is, $15,000 to $25,000 is most of the proposals.
Great. Unfortunately, that is all the time we'll have for questions today. If you did submit a question that was not asked, it will be provided to Foster along with your contact information for a follow-up. Before we conclude, I want to give Foster an opportunity to share some final thoughts. Foster?
Couple key things here is protect and keep your contracts. Going back to those 4 key things that we have is that making sure that you're following the guidelines yourself and your vendors are following those guidelines, going back to that cloud computing thing we were just talking about. And then if you do have something, making sure that you're reporting it. That's how we're talking about keeping and protecting your contracts. Like people lose it because of these things. They're not reporting it. And a lot of times, okay, we had something, but they didn't like fight for the greater good and submit what that malicious stuff is. And sending that to the government. So, hey, we had a random piece of ransomware or virus or whatever that may be, and submitting that. Those are just so important in making sure that you have that. So if you want to keep it, don't fall to one of those easy problems. How we can help? More than happy to hop on the phone with anybody here. You call us. We'll walk through anything, you want to have a conversation, want to answer some questions, we're more than happy to help out. If you want us to do it and basically hold your hand through the whole process, or like, hey, I don't want to deal with this, please fix this for me or tell me what I need to do, we're more than happy to do that as well. And we know all the things that you need to do. We can perform the assessments, and we'll give you what's called POAM and that scope of work and exactly what it needs to do, and generally a budget that it takes to go and become a compliant. And that's a large portion of what we do for people every day. And then just thanks. I appreciate all the people that have reached out to us and said, hey, this is informative, or thanks for this information. I didn't know how complex this was. Hey, I didn't know it was going to be a requirement soon. So I appreciate all that. So thank you. Back to Jack.
Thanks again, Foster, for an awesome presentation and obviously taking the time to answer some great questions from the audience. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today, taking the time out of your days. I know you're all busy, so we appreciate it. And then finally, for the latest happenings, including information on our upcoming webinars and events, please follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. And yeah, that officially concludes today's webinar. Thanks again for your time. Have a great rest of your day and stay safe.
Thanks, everyone.